Good morning. The date is the 14th of April, 2026. You are joining us for a comprehensive intelligence assessment of East Africa. Like a radar screen illuminating multiple overlapping signals, the region currently presents a complex matrix of military, political, and economic developments that require careful, objective parsing. Our mission for today's deep dive is clear: Horn of Africa, Al-Shabaab network, and Somalia's governance stability.
Good morning to you as well, and to you, our listener. Our agenda today is to objectively analyze the primary patterns of events unfolding over the past 2 weeks, assess their multi-level impacts, and forecast upcoming trajectories without generating fear.
Before we proceed, we must note that today's deep dive is sponsored by ProWave AI, and the intelligence we are reviewing is generated by Stylo News, the premier AI-powered news application. For context, Stylo News is the consumer version of the Stylo Intel Ops software.
A system designed specifically for enterprise operations across government, military, and international business sectors.
Precisely. This provides you with unique access to an analytical tool designed to support global decision-makers in real time. We will be examining the perspectives of key leaders on the ground to give you the clearest possible picture of the current operational environment.
All right, I think that covers the formal introduction.
Yeah, okay, anchor voice off.
Thanks.
Let's drop the 1960s newsroom routine and actually talk about what all this data means for you.
Yeah.
Because looking at this raw intelligence, it is a lot to process today.
It really is.
We have military offensives, complete political chaos, massive global supply chain issues, and even offshore oil drilling all crashing into each other at the exact same time. It's wild.
It's a perfect storm of geopolitics, really. Like,
Yeah.
when you look at the Horn of Africa right now, you aren't just looking at localized disputes.
Right.
You are looking at a region where global trade routes, superpower rivalries, and these deeply entrenched internal insurgencies are all just entirely intertwined.
Yeah. So let's start with the immediate tactical picture on the ground. Over the last 2 weeks, there has been a massive spike in counterterrorism operations against Al-Shabaab.
A very significant surge, yes.
We're talking about a very high operational tempo from the Somali National Army and their international partners. There was an airstrike in the Mudug region near Tarmorj, I believe, that took out about 70 militants.
Correct.
And then another set of strikes near Baidoa that hit 12 more. But the thing that really stood out to me is that the U.S. Africa Command, AFRICOM, just launched its 48th airstrike of the year.
Northwest of Kismayo, yeah.
Right. And we are only in April. They are operating at a record pace right now.
And that pace is the key takeaway here. This isn't just routine skirmishing or reactionary defense. This is a highly coordinated, sustained effort to fundamentally degrade Al-Shabaab's operational capacity.
It feels very aggressive.
It is. But to really understand what's happening, you have to look right next door to Kenya. Because Kenya isn't just a bystander in this. They are a massive strategic anchor in this whole fight.
Right. The intelligence highlights this huge $71 million upgrade the U.S. is doing to the Manda Bay airfield in Kenya.
Exactly. And that serves two very distinct purposes.
Okay. Break that down for us.
So, on a tactical level, a modernized Manda Bay gives U.S. and allied forces a much stronger, more sophisticated launching pad for these counterterrorism operations. It expands their reach.
Makes sense. What's the second purpose?
Structurally, it's about geopolitics. The U.S. is actively using this footprint in Kenya to counterbalance China's growing military influence.
Oh, because China has that base just up the coast in Djibouti.
You got it. It's a chess move. It's about maintaining a robust presence in a highly contested corridor.
And Kenya's making their own moves on the ground, too. Their special operations group just stopped an infiltration attempt by militants in Mandera County right before the Eid al-Fitr holiday.
Yeah, they're actively defending that border.
But, okay, here's where I need to stop you, because this next piece of intelligence completely blew my mind.
The logistics web.
Yes, the logistics. Because I've always pictured Al-Shabaab as this, localized, rugged insurgency hiding out in the bush, like a very rural, isolated group.
That's a very common misconception.
Right. But then I read this report about Kenyan security agencies raiding the Eastleigh area of Nairobi and seizing 725 combat uniforms.
Which is a massive haul.
It's huge.
Yeah.
And it gets crazier. The intelligence shows Al-Shabaab is using at least 9 Kenyan front companies to import drones, tactical radios, and camouflage directly from China.
Right out in the open, essentially.
Yeah. They route all this stuff through the commercial supply chain straight to their strongholds in Jalib. Meanwhile, over in London, British authorities just charged a guy named Jermaine Grant with directing Al-Shabaab activities.
Yeah, coordinating from the UK.
Am I looking at this wrong?
Yeah.
Should we be viewing Al-Shabaab less as a traditional insurgency and more like a dark multinational corporation?
That is a brilliant way to frame it. Honestly, it's the only accurate way to view them at this point.
Really, a corporation.
Think about it. They are actively exploiting globalized trade routes. How do you think a terrorist group gets commercial drones from a factory in China to a stronghold in Somalia?
I mean, I guess I never really thought about the mechanics of it.
Right, they don't just carry them in backpacks across the desert. They do customs paperwork.
Wow.
They use legitimate-looking front companies.
Yeah.
They exploit commercial cargo firms. They leverage diaspora networks. What's fascinating here is that the physical battlefield, places like Lower Shabelle, that's only one dimension of the conflict.
It's just the tip of the iceberg.
Exactly. You can have all the airstrikes you want, but taking out a frontline fighter doesn't stop the shipment of radios from overseas. The supply chain itself is the center of gravity.
So you have to attack the paperwork.
To dismantle an organization with this level of sophistication, you have to target the financial and logistical nodes in metropolitan centers like Nairobi or London. You have to freeze the bank accounts, shut down the front companies.
Okay, so we have this massive transnational military and intelligence effort pushing Al-Shabaab back. But military gains are entirely useless if the government behind them is collapsing.
Which brings us to the political crisis.
Right. We are seeing a deeply escalating rift between the Somali federal government, led by President Hassan Sheikh Mohammed, and the various regional federal member states.
And the flashpoint for all of this right now is the city of Baidoa in Southwest State.
This situation sounds almost surreal. So the federal government rejected the re-election of the regional president, Abdiaziz Lefdandri.
Correct. They refused to recognize his mandate.
And in response, federal forces, specifically Turkish-trained Gorgor commandos and U.S.-trained Danab units, basically marched 246 kilometers from Mogadishu to seize Baidoa.
It was a massive projection of federal power.
And Lefdandri actually resigned and fled to Nairobi. But the craziest detail to me, the part that really highlights how complicated this is that there are Ethiopian troops stationed right there at the Baidoa airport.
Yes, under an African Union agreement.
And they just watched. They stayed completely neutral and didn't intervene at all while federal forces took over the city. Like, what is going on there?
Well, it sounds bizarre until you understand the incredibly delicate position those Ethiopian troops are in.
Break that down for me.
They are operating under an African Union mandate, right? And that mandate generally prohibits them from interfering in internal political disputes of the host nation.
Ah, so their hands were tied.
Exactly. Their mission is counterterrorism, not policing Somali politics. If they had stepped in to stop the federal troops, it could have triggered a massive international incident between Ethiopia and the Somali federal government.
Wow. And while this military standoff is happening in Baidoa, a Somali member of parliament just filed formal treason charges against a sitting cabinet minister, alleging foreign espionage.
It's a very chaotic political environment right now.
But at the exact same time, and this is the paradox of the capital city, Mogadishu just held its historic first direct one-person, one-vote local council elections.
A huge milestone for democracy on paper.
Right. So what does this all mean? I mean, is this a case of a government successfully modernizing its democratic foundation in the capital while simultaneously burning down the structural framework of its regional states?
That's the paradox of Somalia right now. And, to remain objective, we really have to look at the underlying mechanics of why this is happening. Let's talk about that one-person, one-vote election.
Okay, yeah, let's get into that.
Historically, Somalia has used a complex, indirect, clan-based delegate system. Basically, clan elders choose delegates, those delegates choose lawmakers, and then the lawmakers choose the president.
Right, which I imagine keeps the power deeply entrenched within specific regional and clan leaders.
Precisely. It creates a very decentralized power structure. But the federal government in Mogadishu wants to scrap that entirely. They have a massive May 15th constitutional mandate deadline looming.
Okay.
And they argue that to truly unify the country, they need to transition to universal suffrage direct voting.
One person, one vote.
Yes. So they view taking control of Baidoa as a harsh, but from their perspective, necessary constitutional step to enforce that national unity and push this transition through.
They see it as ripping off the Band-Aid to force a modern democracy. But I'm guessing the regional leaders don't see it that way at all.
Not even a little bit. From the perspective of regional leaders, this isn't about democracy. It's an unconstitutional power grab.
Right. They see the federal commandos showing up as an invasion.
Yes. They view the deployment of those troops not as unification, but as Mogadishu trying to centralize authority and strip away regional autonomy.
Which means the very troops that were trained by the U.S. and Turkey to fight Al-Shabaab are now being used to settle political disputes.
And that is exactly what social media sentiment and local analysts are heavily focused on right now. There is deep public anxiety about this.
I can imagine.
People are terrified that this political vacuum, this militarization of internal disputes, is going to distract the security forces.
And take their eyes off the actual threat.
Exactly. It could give Al-Shabaab the exact breathing room they need to regroup and exploit the chaos.
That is incredibly tense. And, as if that internal pressure cooker isn't enough, we need to zoom out. We need to look at what the region is dealing with from the outside.
The macro picture.
Yes, because East Africa is getting hammered by macroeconomic and environmental shocks right now. Let's look at Kenya. There is catastrophic flooding from weeks of heavy rains.
It's been devastating.
Over 108 people have died. Thousands upon thousands have been displaced, especially around Nairobi and Kisumu, and critical infrastructure is just washing away.
And while they are dealing with that localized climate crisis, they are simultaneously having to absorb massive economic shockwaves radiating from the Middle East.
Right, you're talking about the Iran-U.S. conflict and the disruption in the Strait of Hormuz.
Yes. The hostilities there have severely disrupted global maritime traffic. When that choke point gets squeezed, commercial ships and aid organizations like the World Food Program, for instance, they have to completely reroute their logistics.
They can't risk going through the Red Sea.
Exactly. So what does that actually look like for someone living in Kenya or Somalia?
Yeah. How does a naval standoff thousands of miles away hit a local farmer?
It changes everything. Instead of taking the most direct route through the canal, these massive cargo ships are now taking longer, much costlier routes entirely around the southern tip of the African continent.
Around the Cape of Good Hope.
Right. We are talking about adding weeks to delivery times. That directly delays vital food aid and medical supplies to vulnerable populations.
That's terrifying.
It is, but it also causes massive spikes in the cost of fuel and agricultural fertilizers.
Oh, because of the extra shipping costs.
Exactly. And the timing couldn't be worse. Think about it. If fertilizer arrives a month late and costs twice as much, you miss the critical planting season.
Wow.
That directly threatens food security for the entire year in both Kenya and Somalia.
It's all connected. I mean, a geopolitical conflict in the Middle East literally ruins a planting season in East Africa.
It's a domino effect.
And amidst all this environmental and economic strain, the geopolitical maneuvering from international players is just in overdrive. The African Union appointed former Tanzanian President Jakaya Kikwete to lead peace efforts in the Horn.
A very experienced diplomat.
Yeah. The UK appointed a new High Commissioner to Kenya, Matt Bow. But the most jarring piece of intelligence here, the one that really caught me off guard, is about Russia.
The recruitment scandal.
Yes. Investigations just revealed that over 1,000 Kenyans were duped by fraudulent employment agencies into fighting for the Russian military in Ukraine.
It is a staggering manipulation of vulnerable people.
How does that even happen?
Well, it highlights how economic desperation, which is fueled by those exact climate and supply chain shocks we just talked about, creates populations that are highly vulnerable to this kind of geopolitical exploitation.
They think they're getting a legitimate job overseas to send money home.
Exactly. They are promised lucrative security or construction contracts, and then they end up on the front lines in Eastern Europe.
Which makes this next development feel like a massive contradiction to me. Against this entire backdrop, climate shocks, political fragility, proxy conflicts, Somalia is initiating a complex, multi-billion-dollar economic project.
The offshore drilling.
Yes, they have officially partnered with Turkey to start their first-ever offshore oil drilling campaign using a Turkish drill ship called the Shabelle.
It is a massive, highly technical undertaking.
But I keep coming back to the political crisis we talked about earlier. Somalia is struggling with basic state stability. So is introducing billions of dollars of potential oil revenue into a fractured state like pouring water on a fire to put it out, or is it pouring gasoline on the flames?
Well, if you don't have a stable constitutional framework for who gets the money, it's basically locking the doors and handing everyone a match.
Wow, that paints a picture.
It all comes down to perspective, really. For international investors and the federal government in Mogadishu, they look at this offshore drilling and see a lifeline.
They see nation building.
Exactly. It's a critical pathway to economic sovereignty. It's a chance to generate independent state revenue, fund national development, and finally pay for their own security forces without relying on international aid.
But the regional states,
Mm.
the ones currently in a standoff with Mogadishu over elections and military deployment.
They see it very differently. The regional member states vehemently reject Mogadishu having unilateral control over these lucrative contracts.
Because they want their share.
Right. Objective economic analysts are warning that if they don't have a universally accepted constitutional framework to dictate how that revenue is shared, a sudden influx of oil wealth will absolutely fuel further interstate conflict.
Everyone will want a piece of the pie.
And they will fight for it. Instead of regional prosperity, you get what economists call the resource curse.
It really feels like all these threads, the military ops, the political infighting, the oil money, the supply chain delays, they are pulling this region in completely opposite directions at the same time.
It is an incredibly volatile mix.
Which leads us to the big question for our listeners. What happens next? Synthesizing all this intelligence we've covered, what are the imminent trajectories that you should be watching for over the coming weeks?
The single most critical near-term variable is that May 15th mandate deadline in Somalia.
The election transition deadline.
Yes, that is the date to circle on your calendar. You need to monitor how this transition plays out. If the federal government and the regional states fail to reach a political consensus by May 15th, the resulting constitutional crisis will likely paralyze governance entirely.
And if governance is paralyzed, what happens to the military operations?
The federal military resources we discussed earlier, the Danab and Gorgor commandos, will likely be shifted away from counterterrorism operations and redirected to manage internal political dissent.
Which is exactly what people fear.
Right. And the moment that happens, it directly creates an operational opening for Al-Shabaab to expand and reclaim territory.
Now, regarding the threat environment for international actors, what does the Stylo News intelligence say about the risk to U.S. and allied personnel in the region?
The baseline threat remains elevated. It is important to note that there is currently no specific imminent warning indicating a direct attack on major facilities like Camp Lemonnier in Djibouti or the embassies in Nairobi and Mogadishu.
Okay, that's good to know.
However, the risk is particularly acute for personnel operating within Somalia, and specifically along the volatile Kenya-Somalia border.
Any specific areas?
Yes, the Ramo-Mandera corridor is an area of high concern. Cross-border infiltrations by insurgents continue to be a regular occurrence there, so that requires constant vigilance.
And finally, on the economic front, there's a major shift we should be watching regarding that exact same border, right?
Yes, absolutely. Listeners should closely monitor the planned reopening of the Kenya-Somalia border later this month.
Which has been closed for a while.
It has, and this reopening is an effort heavily championed by Kenyan President William Ruto.
And the goal there is to formalize trade and try to boost the East African community's overall economic integration.
Exactly. But it is going to be a fascinating test case. Can a localized economic initiative, like reopening a border, actually succeed and drive growth, even while regional leaders are trying to navigate the massive imported inflation caused by those Middle Eastern supply chain disruptions we discussed?
Right. It is a delicate balancing act of pursuing local regional growth while managing massive global headwinds.
It's going to be a tough needle to thread.
Okay, well, I'm going to put my 1960s anchor hat back on for just a moment to formally wrap up our intelligence brief.
Go for it.
For those of you who require this level of analytical depth on a daily basis, we highly recommend utilizing Stylo News. It is a sophisticated mobile and desktop application that allows individuals to customize their own personal intelligence-style briefs.
It draws from hundreds of traditional global news sources, as well as real-time updates from X, and uses advanced AI to synthesize the data.
Indeed. We encourage you to subscribe to Stylo News for AI-powered on-demand intelligence. You can access it directly at www.stylonews.com.
And dropping the formal persona completely, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive today. It is always a pleasure to unpack these incredibly complex global webs with you.
It really is. We love digging into these topics, figuring out how the pieces fit together, and we want to know what you want to hear about next.
Absolutely.
Please send us your requests for future deep dives, and make sure to follow Stylo News on your favorite social media platforms to keep the conversation going.
I do want to leave you with one final thought to mull over.
Okay, what do you have?
We mentioned at the start that this region is like a radar screen of overlapping signals. The African Union is currently pushing hard for greater economic and social integration across the entire continent.
Right.
They have these grand unifying visions like building an African integrated high-speed railway network or expanding the Africa Cup of Nations to foster unity.
Big, ambitious projects.
Very ambitious. But as we've explored today, how will the continent balance these grand visions of a modern, borderless, unified Africa with the very harsh, very present realities of localized conflicts, fractured governments, and fiercely contested internal borders?
Yeah, it is the ultimate tension that will define the region's future. It's definitely something to keep an eye on. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next Deep Dive.